Welcome to Playing with Fire, the podcast for people who are ready to custom build their love.
We're talking about non-monogamy, however you design it, as an individuation opportunity.
Want to leave the default and make your life spectacularly you? You're in the right place. Kenneth, my love.
Hi, Joli.
So we're going to talk about something I'm kind of a little bit obsessed with. And I know it's not necessarily the top topic on your mind, but I'm going to talk about romantic friendship.
Well, it's not on my mind.
Interesting. I don't think of it as something that you care about as much.
Well, so the thing is, I am a big fan of friendship, even though I don't take a lot of action that
Okay, if you've ever wanted to be
friendship.
Ken's friend, but he hasn't followed up, now's your moment. You can be like, you know what? I got it on recording. You said you want friends. So
I do, and
which means you have to show up for them.
Lazy, I guess. But my point was, yes, I'm a fan of friendship, and myself, you say romantic friendship, and it's what you said earlier, or as Ken says, friendship. So
okay, so let's define our terms.
Let's define our terms.
I love to do. The scholar in me loves to define terms. So for me, romantic friendship, it falls under the umbrella of friendship, which for me just means, hey, we have a relationship because you are my friend. We have a relationship. That relationship is one that is intimate in certain ways. Now, you and I have a romantic relationship, and we have a sexual relationship. I don't know whether you knew that. Oh, you do know that, right?
I'm aware.
Okay, good. That means I'm doing well there.
I have noticed.
You've noticed, yay!
So well done.
But we could have a romantic relationship with or without the sexual part. Yes. And in fact, we have had that at the beginning of our friendship. We were platonic friends where we were close. We talked to each other about topics we cared about, things we were passionate about. We talked about kids. We talked about and we talked about our feelings to some degree, not a ton, but to some degree.
And if buying chocolate for someone when they haven't explicitly asked for it is romantic, well, I did that a lot.
Okay, so here's the start of it. Platonic friendship, romantic friendship, and then, well, whatever this is that we have now, which is a friendship that includes everything up to including owning a house together and being married and having sex quite a bit and raising children together. There are so many ways to be friends. So I want to be clear about what I mean when I say romantic friendship, but it's tricky to be clear.
I was going to say, well, let's hear it.
Okay.
What you got?
All the stuff that falls under the category of romance. What are some of those things for you? Being brought flowers is up there for me. I love being brought flowers.
Flowers. Being sung to.
Oh my God. Yes.
Love that.
Sing to me. Read to me. Know how I like my coffee and bring it to me and hand it to me with both of your hands, with that like intentional, like I brought you this.
Attention and intention.
And knowing, like a knowing, a depth of knowing who you are and how you like things. There's so many things. A willingness to participate in my self-care. Mm-hmm. I find that very romantic. Now, all of these things are things that I have done with absolutely platonic friends. Mm-hmm. So to some degree, and I have described this to some people and they're like, you just mean friends, right? And I know I'm describing this to you and you're like, I could do that for any friend.
I remember when I was much younger, when I'd be driving through town and I would see somebody that I knew, if they were a friend, I would stop and see if they wanted a ride.
Yeah, sure.
If they were an acquaintance, I would just keep driving. It's like, oh, I know that person. But then there was another level of attention that I would pay someone who was a friend. And to me, I couldn't say it at the time, but I didn't know where the line was. At what point does it stop being romantic? I mean, if handing someone your umbrella when it's raining. Is that a romantic act? I think there are many movies that would support that that is a romantic act.
Right.
Um,
So the reason I think this is so hard to talk about is because the word romance has gotten all tangled up with sex in our culture, but they don't actually have to be tangled up. So you and I were first friends in a platonic sense, in that it never occurred to either of us that we were being romantic. I I mean, we weren't overtly thinking about having a romantic relationship, and that went on for years. And then we started having a relationship where we very clearly were not having sex. And in fact, we had agreed not to have sex. We had agreed with other partners that we would not be having, that you and I would not be having sex. But boy, was it romantic.
yeah,
I mean, there was hand holding, there was sitting next to each other, there was laughing at each other's jokes, and your jokes are not that funny.
it was nice of her to laugh.
No,
Some are
better.
some are great.
You nail it
The whole
sometimes.
rest of them are.
But you used to tell
So,
that long, short horse joke. I don't know. It went on and on.
big horse, little horse joke, but we'll look over that.
You've told me this joke so many times. I still don't even know it, and I have a
So
good memory.
clearly that was not landing. I would like to tell you what we're talking about romance. You know what my favorite rom-com is? My favorite romantic comedy?
Which one?
Good Omens. No sex. Well, there is sex in it, but that's not between the romantic interests,
Not between the romantic interests. So, yeah,
right?
absolutely. So if you haven't watched the Amazon version of Neil Gaiman's Good Omens, watch it. There's romantic friendship.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So romantic friendship existed for me long before I was calling out and naming it. Hey, this is romantic friendship. This is what I want. But I've started getting really specific about it. And here's why. I have spent years, whole decades of my life, deeply involved in what I think of as a romantic friendship. In other words, I am showing lots of intention, and I do these lovely romantic gestures for people. And then when I have said that that feels romantic for me, that friend freaks out and bails. And that sucks
It does suck.
because nothing about the act bothered them for years.
Now, they weren't complaining about the actions of romance. They were complaining
About
and worried
me.
about the label of romantic on what was already happening.
Right. And this is so contextual because if you change the context, you change the culture, you change it, look at any other time and place, and you'd have a different set of rules about what romance is, a different set of norms about cultural standards, what's okay, what's acceptable, what falls in and out of the bounds. And I am all about moving stuff from implicit expectations to explicit communication. So when I have named, hey, I love doing this romantic gesture for you, I thought that that was helpful. I thought it was naming, like, yeah, this is great. Like, why would we sit far apart when we both have a little touch hunger and we want to sit close to each other?
Yeah.
And
naming it, as we've talked about in other areas, naming something and looking right at it allows you to celebrate it and be
yeah,
intentional and let it come into your full awareness.
right. So the thing that does need to enter into any friendship that frequently gets missed, though, is conversations about boundaries. So
Yes.
in all of this, in the creation of a romantic friendship, or just in the recognition of, oh, I have a romantic friendship, there is this this conversation has to have about, okay, so what do we not do together? And I think that these conversations are fun. I think they're exciting. I think they're interesting. And I know that a lot of people get really nervous about them. And I also get nervous about having them because sometimes when we have conversations about boundaries, we find out that our boundaries feel kind of mutually exclusive, and friendships wind up changing in ways that we wish they hadn't, or they wind up ending, and it's a bummer. I don't actually regret any of those conversations, though. Even when they have wound up ending a friendship, it matters a lot to me that I am in integrity with explicitly asking for and then observing whatever boundaries are set. But here's the thing, romantic friendship breaks all the rules. Like just naming a friendship romantic, like, so if you're monogamous and then you name a friendship romantic, it can feel like you're breaking the rules of monogamy because romance should only be for one person.
Because there are implications of romance.
Yeah, even though
Right.
you might be doing all those activities. So when I was completely monogamous, like I was behaving monogamous, I didn't even know the word polyamory. I had a long-term best friend over a decade. We made each other, every gift we ever exchanged, we handmade. We took pictures of each other with our children, then created photo albums for each other. So because we knew our husbands didn't take pictures of us enough, and we knew what each other liked. We knew exactly how each other liked our pasta cooked, even though it was completely different, which meant we each had to cook different textures of pasta for each other. But when I named this as being deeply romantically satisfying to me, that friendship lasted but a few months more before it ended.
Mhm.
I don't think that that's a coincidence, and it's happened again since. So I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this culturally. I want to talk about this in my relationships because I'm also queer. And what I have found is it's much safer for me to make friends on dating apps then, because then at least it's expected that we'll have these conversations about what's in the relationship and what's out.
So dating apps, I'm hearing you say this right now. Dating apps are have a built-in expectation that you're going to be talking about boundaries somewhere along the way.
Particularly romantic and sexual boundaries.
Particularly romantic and sexual boundaries. In fact, that's what the profile is.
Yeah.
It is
That's the
list of
starting
boundaries,
point
right?
of them, and wants and needs and desires.
Yeah. Whereas,
and then I was on a first date last night and we talked about things. We started conversations with the premise that we had to talk about boundaries. We had to talk about what we wanted, as well as what we were inviting, what we were looking for, as well as what our limits were.
And then
so
there's
now
an
dating
awkwardness having those conversations with someone that
we just casually met
Yeah.
somehow because we had overlapping interests. So everybody tells me, go ahead, just go spend time doing the activities that you like doing and meet people there. And I have done that over and over again. And I have found that the normies might not be okay. Now, if I insulted you by saying that, let me say this. If you like the cultural norms, that's fine. But this one seems to be hurting us all. So I want us all to look very closely at exactly what it is we mean when we say romantic, and maybe really stop and think about whether romance is supposed to be tied directly to sex, or whether it needs to be, or whether, like, do you really just need me not to use the word romance and just say close?
Is there another word we could be using that would be less
threatening?
fraught and threatening?
Right. So this is a little subversive, right? Having this conversation. I've also used the word intimate and had that word thrown back at me.
I was going to say, did that work?
No. So I've over and over again done this experiment in college classes where, so when I'm teaching human sexuality, I will ask a group that I don't know very well yet. Towards the beginning of the class, I'll ask them how they would feel about their partner having an intimate dinner with someone else. The word intimate, you can watch at least half of the class, their eyes start to come just bugging out of their head. Some of them are gripping their books or squeezing their fists.
And you haven't provided them with a definition of intimate. They're all
no definition, no context.
Bringing their own
exactly
definition in. Okay.
So this is another word that it's fraught. And so I think just having these conversations is both subversive, but also a little disorienting. Like, what exactly? Wait, okay, if I'm going to have conversations with my friends about what these relationships are actually for, what the purpose of my friendship with you is.
I love your use of the word disorienting right there. Oh, is your orientation straight? Cool. Great. Good. That's your boundary. Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to talk about romantic friendships. It's a little disorienting, isn't it? What does my orientation mean as a straight person or even as a queer person? How does it apply to this kind of relationship?
So far, all of the friendships with cisgender women who have ended their friendship with me when I named that there was a romantic component to our relationship. All of them were with straight women who somehow, like, I did not say I wanted a relationship with them. Like, I didn't want to change in our relationship. I wasn't looking for one. So there's some confusion in the room.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the reason I'm having this conversation with you here and not with them is because these friendships ended, and with no ability to talk out, like, wait. This is a semantics issue. This is a semiotics issue. This is like, how do we use this language? I'm sorry, just using the word romantic now has to end our friendship.
Yeah, and it sounds
Nothing
like it's
happened.
so fraught that they didn't even want to
Yes.
engage in the conversation about what it means.
Yeah. And so the last time this happened now is a year and a half ago. So I feel like enough of this has healed. And I've gone through 18 months of therapy about it as well, because I really needed to let this settle enough to be like, wow. So this has happened 3 times in my life. And I want to be able to be friends with people who I feel warmly about, and then take deep consideration about knowing them and providing them with close, comforting contact. And there are whole groups who seem to be out of bounds then. So for me, as a queer polyamorous woman, those groups include straight women, monogamous people, and cisgender monogamous men, definitely. Oh my gosh, can't even text them. Is this really how we mean to be doing our society? So like I am by nature a threat. My friendship is a threat. This feels like I feel very vulnerable and exposed in this moment. Like,
I can imagine.
it's hard.
So
I know how to control my behaviors and my actions. So this isn't about, will I overstep a boundary? I was in a full on, deeply in love relationship with you where I had never lied about it to any degree, and very carefully did not have any sexual interaction with you until I'd gotten permission from everybody involved, everybody who might have had any say about it. I know how to behave myself.
and yet the conversation, the bringing the ideas into the room, and so you're bringing an idea into the room, but it's not your idea. You're bringing up an idea, and then the people in the room are bringing their version of that
So
idea into the room.
connotation
Yeah, it's not what you're
denotation.
saying, it's what they're hearing, and what comes up out of them. And I mean, this happens to us, and it has happened a lot in our early stages of our relationship, where you would come to me with an idea, and all of my stuff, which I had not looked at yet and not thought about and not done enough reflection about, would come up. And I would have all
Jump to
of these, I would jump to
conclusions.
conclusions, and I would have conversations from my side that had nothing to do with what you were trying to talk about, because it was all my
So
stuff.
yeah, so when I bring up an idea, I mean, for this to be a conversation, like, let's define our terms. Let's talk about what we're talking about. Let's have a meta conversation about, okay, can we talk about, for example, can we talk about what our friendship really is, what it's for? Can we talk about a concept like romantic friendship and whether that's something you're interested in or not? And can we talk about boundaries? Because here's the thing, if we're talking about drawing a line between a romantic and a sexual relationship, well, I need to know what sex is, don't I? And we've had this conversation on the podcast so many times, but
So once you start,
most people don't actually know exactly how they define sex. How do you know when sex has started? It's not as cut and dry as most people imagine. So when I talk to couples, frequently the initiating act of their sexual exchanges is as subtle as this. They'll be lying in bed and a hand is placed somewhere. Perhaps he places his hand on her side. They have, over the course of years, developed a pattern where she knows that that means he's interested. If she pushes back into him, that means she's receptive. If she moves away a little, she's not. No conversation has been had except the very subtle nonverbal clues that have just been passed back and forth. And now, so when did sex start? Did it start with that touch? Did it start with the thought beforehand?
Did it start different for one person than the other?
Right. Or are we really going to be as reductive as like sex starts when bodily fluids are exchanged or something? And I don't mean to make it seem like there's some simple answer. There's not. But in fact, I don't know how to observe your boundaries unless we engage in a conversation about what your boundaries are. And that all on its own may be uncomfortable. And it's my job. I always imagine it to be my job to invite you to share vulnerable information with me, to make space for us to have uncomfortable conversations.
So I'll lay out a couple things that are and have been uncomfortable for me that I think are relevant to the conversation. So if you come to me and you say you want to have a romantic friendship, now I don't know what you mean. Those words could mean anything, and we're going to need to have a conversation about it. So if I then start the conversation and say, well, these are my boundaries for our relationship. First of all, I am immediately insecure and terrified that those boundaries, if I want to continue to have a relationship with you,
yeah,
then I can immediately get to a spot where it's like, well, if I define my boundaries, that could end this relationship the way that I want to be having it. And so now I'm scared.
So it feels like it might be safer not to have the conversation about boundaries.
Not to have the conversation if I have.
Oh, you just described your first marriage.
And the beginning of ours.
Yeah.
I did
not much to my chagrin.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want you to see me clearly because I am slippery. I have a lot of Loki energy in me, and you would come.
Loki, L-O-K-I.
L-O-K-I versus low key.
Well, you have some of that too.
Maybe after that. But you would come to me and be like, okay, here's some facts about, or, ideas, desires, whatever, about how our relationship could go. And I would have to deal with the fact that I didn't want you to see how I wanted our relationship to go.
Oh, yeah.
Now, depending on who we are to each other, that could be enough for me to say, well, thanks. I don't want you to see me any clearer than this, so I'm going to head out.
Yeah.
That's one of the ways that I can, from my personal experience, see how that I could get there and how you could feel. And it's not, I mean, I can absolutely see how you would experience that as you being threatening to me.
Well, it has left me, when this has happened to me, when I've said, hey, I want to have a discussion about what your boundaries are and what mine are, so that I don't accidentally step over and overstep those boundaries. Yeah, that has ended some friendships.
Yeah.
And being the kind of person I am, I have then even wanted to have a conversation like, wait, shouldn't we have a closer conversation or something? But in fact,
more visibility. It's all about me.
And if it was a full like, nope, I want the relationship ended, then I can't consensually, I can't actually ask for that conversation. I mean, I will make one ask and say, would you be amenable to a conversation about this?
No.
But if the answer is no, the answer is no. One time I was told, well, I might be able to have that conversation in a year or two. I mean, it never happened. So I don't, this is really tender stuff because I believe that the most transformative thing for our culture, the society that you and I live in, the most transformative thing would be for us to have multifaceted friendships with more people, a more intertwined, interconnected, intra-connected world of people who felt that they felt their individuality, felt their self, their capital S self, and felt how they are intrinsically connected to each other. Not just in a web of life way, but in a you matter. You matter.
A conscious, intentional feeling.
You matter not just
you,
because
the individual.
You're human, but you matter because I see you. So how do I have those friendships if it's scary to have boundary conversations, or if it's disorienting, or if it has people questioning their own like uninterrogated sexuality issues, or if people just don't have the language and don't really want to spend the time to upgrade their language, to be like, okay, I don't know what the definition of romance is. Oh my God, I have to think about this.
Mhm.
What do I do? And I only have a 2-step plan for this. I
Okay.
got 2 steps.
All right.
Obviously, this is an area where I am actively working on this all the time. I currently have 2 friendships that I'm working on this consciously. And they are still in the very nascent stages, even though one of them's been going on now for 7 months, I think. But still, it's so tentative and tender because I'm trying to do this thoughtfully and mindfully. So here are the 2 things. One, I am having conversations about boundaries as a norm that I start from the very first contact I have with someone. I start introducing the language. So if somebody is not willing to have conversations that include the word boundaries, then I just do not start the friendship at all, because it's just not going to work for me.
You don't want to have a friendship that doesn't include boundaries and a discussion
And
of them.
explicit, like people who want to take the time to engage in that.
Mhm.
The other big word, though, is romance. So the reason I'm using the word romantic friendship, it's intentional. It's subversive. It is challenging. It challenges the norms. And so this is the word that I'm using to boundaries and romance are the 2 words that I'm using to help me sort of sort people out and say, you don't have to be friends with me. I am okay with you not wanting to be friends with me. But I don't want to continue to invest in friendships where simply using a word differently is enough to end a friendship that we've now poured hundreds of hours into. So I'm using my words very carefully, and I'm actually using the semiotics, using the language itself to help me make sure that I'm in alignment with people from the very first friendship date or conversation we have. And so far, I think that is helpful.
So is the language the first step?
The language.
Okay.
Making sure that the language is right up front and I name it. I name that these conversations need to happen. And I use these specific words that have later come back and bit me in the ass.
Yeah. So
find
out if they're going to bite you early.
Yep. The second one is this. And I use this tool. I use it in my private coaching. I use it in my group coaching. I use it with you. I use it with the kids. I ask people to have conversations with me, and we can come to whatever conclusion. So we have a conversation about, say, boundaries. Great, no problem. What's your boundary? Are you all right? A very common one. Is it all right if I text you whenever I feel like it?
Mhm.
Or would you like me to confine text contact to between certain hours? Is it, and then I'll share with you. I use my do not disturb. So you can text me whenever you want. I will respond when I'm ready. Something like that. I start setting those conversations really early, and I think the second step is actually the more important one.
Okay.
It's that I set a date to revisit that conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And I
Okay.
put it in our share. I set an actual calendar date for a month or 3 months or a year from now, whatever it is. And I invite that person to the conversation, and we plan to have a conversation. So it will be a calendar invite that goes out like, let's talk about boundaries and romance in our friendship again 3 months from now. Let's talk about our monogamous commitments or our non-monogamous commitments 3 months from now. Let's talk about whether we like to have overlapping vacations. Let's talk about whether we have travel plans. Whatever it is, set the damn date, put it in your phone, and have it be a shared thing that's on your calendar. I know that sounds like it's ridiculously simple. And so it sounds a little overly structured, but the reason it works is because I see so frequently, I see people in my office who are like, we had this conversation. It was so hard to bring up the topic the first time. We kind of got to a spot where it was okay. We figured out where we both were. And now And now it's been 6 months and I really need to have the next part of that conversation, and I'm afraid to bring it up again. So build
And
in the habit of revisiting these conversations. So early and often, I guess there's the bottom line. Language and shared meaning need to enter the picture early, and then they need to be revisited with regularity, not just as needed. As needed will always fall to the more courageous and vulnerable, like the person who's more comfortable being vulnerable will wind up putting themselves out there. And the person who has a little bit more withdrawing or might have a little tendency to be like, you know what, I'd rather just not rock the boat. So it's an asymmetry that doesn't need to exist. You can just agree to revisit the conversation ahead of
and
time
then
and let the
that gets
calendar
around.
hold the tension.
I'm curious about something you said. So you've had a conversation about it, and now you're thinking you're going to want to have it again. And you said you might be afraid to bring it up again. Having already had a conversation like that, why would you be afraid to bring it up another time?
Okay. I actually had a great conversation just today. So this came up where a client said, so I had a conversation about the state of our relationship. My partner is going through divorce. They're still figuring out exactly what, like they're getting divorced. That's all fine. They're separated and they're trying to figure out what their dating life's going to be like. And for right now, they feel like they need to not officially be in a relationship. Okay. So I'm like, so we had that conversation. And now I don't know when I'm allowed to ask again. Can we officially be in a relationship? And since I brought it up the first time, I feel like it'll feel pressuring, or it might
I see.
upset the apple cart, or she might just bail on me because I don't know whether she's ready.
Okay, well, I get that. I mean, I've experienced that in small ways. Hey, do you want to go see this movie? Sure. Okay. Week later, should I ask? Is that pestering? Was I waiting for her to come back and tell me that she wanted to go see the movie? What was I doing? Uh-oh. Now I have to figure out what I was doing, and now I might be scared both of me and of you to bring it up again. But
And
if
I
I say,
see your eyes watering, so I know we're into this.
right? Do you want to go see a movie? Sure. Okay. Well, let's look at our schedules and come back tomorrow and decide when to see it. Completely different situation.
Yep.
Because now we
You've
have
already
both agreed, we've got consent to talk about it again.
There you go. So there are two kinds of consent at work there. There's mutual consent. We're gaining consent from a partner or a friend or a person in our life. We're also gaining self-consent. We're going inside and pre-committing. Oh, I want to revisit this issue.
Mhm.
That's a game changer.
It is.
Because that's alignment. That's when I'm like, I know what I want. So I'm going to set up a scenario where I can potentially get what I want. And a lot of us will do anything at all so that we can not get what we want. We're really good at that.
I don't know why that's true, but it is so true. So
You've been a great lesson for me in that.
And you have been describing this romantic friendship concept as subversive. And one of the things that can subvert is that self-sabotage.
Because that's what it is, really, right?
Intentionally and saying, this is what I would like. We're just defining what we want out of the relationship rather than just letting it be whatever the average of the things that we're actually willing to talk about together turns out to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, our relationships fall into sort of habit and pattern, obligation and blase, ennui, even when we don't stay present to the dynamic, like, yeah, let's keep having that conversation. And if we're so conflict averse, if we're so afraid of starting any kind of conflict, it's really hard to have the relationships we really want. And I have been so honored and privileged, and it has absolutely been the most pleasurable relationship of my life that you have learned, despite your original patterns, your inclinations, you have learned to stay in the room during conflict.
That was
to stay present.
that was not an easy get for me. Yeah.
And not just to stay present and like shut down and dissociate, but to stay present and self-regulate, do the regulation skills that you need to do so that you can stay present and set boundaries and say, I'm going to stay in the room, and staying in the room right now is going to look like me going for a 15-minute walk and coming back to this room. That's staying in the room too.
Which, by the way, is another situation where I say, I'm going for a walk. I will be back in 15 minutes. And
The clock
again, I
holds
get
the
consent, you
container.
get consent. And yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's use our tools.
Let's use our tools. We don't have to do this alone. It doesn't have to all come from inside, unformed. And this was what got in my way. I could go on. I love talking about myself, but the okay, so you've got a two-step process.
Right. So language, introduce the language and get shared meaning going by using language and talking about our words and our boundaries and all of that. Do it right from the beginning and set up regular conversations. Now, I know relationship check-ins as a concept, I am not saying anything new here. This is not like groundbreaking information, but do you have them in your friendships? Do you have relationship checkups, check-ins with your friendships? Are you like, is that built in? Because what we have found is that relationship check-ins combined with a mutual agreement to also be able to revisit and bring stuff up when new stuff happens, when spontaneously the need arises, it's those two things in concert that create really delicious relationships.
It does. One of my favorite questions around friendship is, so how's this going for you, our friendship? Well, just tell me all the things. What do you like? What do you not like? What's working? What isn't working? What would you like to have in it? What would you like to remove?
That's my favorite conversation is what's not working.
Oh, you love that.
I am the opposite of conflict averse.
And the thing, what's interesting is
what's not working? Tell me so that we can transform it.
Which think about me for a moment in any other situation than a human relationship. What's the first thing I look at?
What's not working?
What needs to be fixed?
Yep.
Because I want to be the one fixing. I'm a troubleshooter. I love to fix things. And then and I have learned over the years slowly that those skills are applicable to relationship.
Can I tell you something?
Yes.
Very slowly over the last 13 years. Very slowly. 13 years is not bad at all. You have become a relationship engineer because you do apply that troubleshooting engineering perspective to our relationship. So I have a challenge for you.
All right.
Apply it to another relationship because you have a tendency to have shorter term relationships.
Yep, I do.
Rather than really build long term. You just have you tend to marry your long term relationships. And
tends to, it's a tendency.
And I mean, I think that it would be interesting. You do have some comets who come in here, but you don't have to negotiate a lot with them.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. And here's the thing, it doesn't have to be a sexual partner. This could be a romantic friendship. This could be a platonic friendship. This could be a collegial sort of, it could be anything, but what do you say? Want to level up?
So I would like to accept that challenge, but I'm not going to do it without defining parameters. Because I know that
you are a technician.
Accepted in 40 years, I will have a friend. So I'll have to decide what time frame to agree to about that.
Okay. What do you think? We just started, so we're recording at the beginning in January of 2023. The Jeopardy music is now playing in my head.
Yeah, that must play a lot when you talk to me.
I mean, I've gotten patient.
Okay, by Christmas.
Okay, I'll
give myself the year.
A nice long runway, and I think that that's an important thing. I do use the calendar and the clock a lot to set containers for us.
Then I just imagine that I'll live forever and eventually I'll get to it.
Right. So I live very memento mori.
Yes.
Remember, you will die. Like that is like center in me. And it has been since I was a little child because death has always circled around me. But you have lived as if you would live forever. And so the calendar and clock are important for both of us as a tool for different reasons.
Yeah.
You get to have this long runway. You get to decide what that is. I have offered you a challenge. You accepted it. And I offer you this too. I am happy and thrilled to support you as you try to figure out what that will look like, including butting out and not asking you about it again. Because you just committed to this, not to me, but to yourself.
That was my
It doesn't have
commitment
anything to
me.
do with me.
Mhm.
So I welcome you to say, okay, I'm good.
I
This
see.
doesn't actually have anything
Yep.
to do with
I
you
have,
now,
I've,
other than I'm going to check in around Christmas and say, so how did that go for you?
wow.
Going in my phone, baby.
So here it is. Here's an example for me of romance.
Mm,
This doesn't have anything to do with our sex life. It doesn't have anything to do explicitly with the way we are married this year.
nope.
It has to do with the fact that you, my friend, have seen a thing that is true as you see it about me. I'm letting myself be seen, and you offered something that you believe will enhance my life. That's romance to
Well,
me.
now I'm all teared up.
Well, yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. That's an amazing gift.
It's genuinely the best part of my life to be with all the people who let me be this close to them, who let me be. And I'm lucky enough to also do that professionally, to hold space for people who want to try something new and see how it goes without any promise that it will work out the way they planned. And it gives me such hope that anything is possible.
Yeah.
To just be able to hold that, say, okay, and now it's yours. And there will be no ramification or performative consequence about this.
Yeah.
I'm just here to provide you a check-in spot and say, so how'd that go?
What a sweet gift. Thank you.
Thank you for playing along in the crazy life that is being married to Joli.
Well, so here I am. Yep. Okay. I accept that challenge. And I was going to say your challenge, but it isn't. It's mine. I have accepted it. Now it's mine. And about looking for and developing friendships that in which I don't enforce any artificial boundaries. I will use my boundaries and I will find out what their boundaries are and we'll work with those rather than whatever artificial boundaries are culturally applied.
Yeah. So you can't just join a team and rely on the cultural container.
No, this is about
It's about consciously
actually seeing another person and letting them see me, which is probably the most terrifying and it's a roller coaster or a bungee jump, maybe.
Do it like Roy Kent would do it. Right?
Right.
Like just show up for it. Doesn't matter. Like just show up.
You deserve fireworks. You deserve. Yeah, you don't deserve fine.
Exactly.
Totally.
You do not deserve fine. You deserve fireworks. Thanks, babe.